الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. When we look at the various acts of worship, then there is a physical dimension to it and there is a monetary dimension to it. Some have an overwhelmingly more physical dimension and some have a more overwhelmingly monetary dimension to it. So salah and fasting, it has a physical dimension. Salah, there are certain acts that one needs to observe. Fasting, you need to abstain. When you look at the monetary aspect, then zakat has a monetary dimension to it, where you have to part with your money. And then hajj is a combination of the two, where you have to have the money. That is when you will perform this epic journey. And together with that, you also need to have the physical capacity. Now, when we've come into this world, we've come with the objective of worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And while we live in this world for our survival, for the fulfillment of our needs, we work, we earn, we amass wealth. But that wealth, it is in our possession as an amana. Essentially it belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Man likes to say, mali, mali, my wealth, my wealth. Yet the hadith says that your wealth is what has passed through you already. And the wealth that you have at your disposal, will you use it? There's no guarantee. It may become the wealth of your inheritors tomorrow. So Allah Rabbul Izzah has allowed us the opportunity to gather and amass wealth. And there are certain dues that are on wealth. There are the farz due, which is zakat. Then there are nafil dues, like sadaqah, lillah. There are the wajib dues on the wealth, like the fitrah at the time of Eid al-Fitr. Wajib is also the qurbani. So these are all acts of worship that are linked to our wealth. Our discussion today centers around zakat. Now, zakat, it has a literal meaning to the word, and it has also a Islamic Shar'i meaning to the word. When we look at this word zakat from a literal point of view, then literally it means growth, for something to grow. Now, on the one hand, it may grow in the actual amount, or it may grow quantitatively or qualitatively, where sometimes with a little bit of resources you are able to achieve a lot. And sometimes you have abundance, but it gets just wasted. So with zakat, your wealth increases. In the spiritual sense, there's barakah, and also in the literal sense. Every day there's an angel that makes dua. Allahumma a'ati munfiqan khalafa. Oh Allah, grant the one who spends a recompense. Allahumma a'ti mumsikan talafa. Oh Allah, the one who holds back, then you also hold back from that person. And the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Hassinu amwalakum bizakah. Fortify your wealth, protect your wealth through zakah. So it's a means of protection of one's wealth. It's also a means of purification of one's wealth. That through the different avenues that we gain our wealth, there may be certain aspects of love of wealth that come into our heart, greed for more wealth, and through zakat, that is cleansed from us. In terms of the technical and the Shar'i meaning of zakat, zakat is for the owner of nisab, so that is a specific amount, to disperse 2.5% of qualifying assets. So there are certain assets which are considered as zakatable assets, and then you less your qualifying liabilities to an eligible recipient every lunar year. So there are 5 aspects in this definition that need explanation, and that is what we will then proceed to unpack the different aspects and dimensions. But before getting to that, a reminder that zakat is the 3rd pillar of the deen of Islam. As we know, Islam is built on 5 pillars. Allah Rabbul Izzah says, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ. That take from their wealth, O Nabi of Allah, and it is a means of purification and cleansing. And Allah Rabbul Izzah says in numerous verses of the Noble Quran, وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ, and give zakah. And zakah has been mentioned 28 times in the Noble Quran with salah, and 27 times in the same verse with salah. If a person disregards zakah, its fardiyat, and deems it trivial, then that person will be a kafir. And not fulfilling this important injunction is a major sin. Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, during his khilafah, after Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, then there were those who said they would perform salah, but they said that the zakah, we gave it to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and now he passed away, so we are not going to give it anymore, because the Nabi of Allah has passed on. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said, I will wage war against the one who separates between salah and zakah. I will wage jihad against that person. So it connects us with Allah, and that is the objective that of every act of worship, that we need to see how that takes us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also it is a means of connecting people with each other, in the sense that when you give wealth, you are uplifting others. So when we look at the benefits that come from this, first and foremost, you are subservient to the command of Allah. You are fulfilling an obligation. And then you are showing gratitude to Allah for a bounty that He has granted you. It's a means of purification of your soul, and it develops care and compassion for the poor, the needy, and it's a means of barakah and protection of one's wealth. And when we disperse our zakah in a manner that is appropriate, then that forms a baseline provision for people. Like in the hadith it says, تُؤْخَذُ مِنْ أَغْنِيَائِهِمْ وَتُرَدُّ إِلَىٰ فُقَرَائِهِمْ. It is taken from the wealthy and it's given to the poor. So the first recipients and the first people that you should look at to give your zakah are those who are needy in your own family and in your own community. And then yes, you can give to other places also. During the time of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sayyidina Mu'az had collected some zakah in Yemen, and he brought it to Madinatul Munawwarah. So if you send your zakah to a place that is more needy than your own community, like Gaza at this moment, then that is also commendable when the need is there, and when under normal circumstances to give it to the poor in your own community, that would be better, because the hadith says, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِ it is taken from the wealthy from amongst you and given to the poor from amongst you. So it is collective effort within a community. And the broader benefits that come from this, it alleviates poverty. It becomes a means of removing spiritual maladies. When you actually give the zakah and you go and you disperse it and you find poor people and you give it to them in their hand and you see how they're living, that has an impact upon you. And as a result of that, that will then be a means of our cleansing our spiritual maladies. The broader benefits of zakah is that it's an economic stimulus which activates consumer spending. So when one person is going to give zakah, another person will buy bread with that, another person will purchase clothing, and it will be a means of stimulating the Islamic economy. And in that way it strengthens the Islamic economy and builds bridges between the wealthy and the poor. It builds the bonds of love, compassion, brotherhood between the rich and the poor. When we give zakah, it shouldn't be that it's an obligation, now I've got to give it, it's hard. Person has stock in his warehouse, and now you've got to give an amount, and it's a huge amount, so you feel difficult, and the year passes by so quickly that it's already time for zakah. No, we shouldn't think of it as a tax or an obligation, but we should think of it that we are giving with the spirit of zakah, with the generosity of our heart, understanding that this is the right of the poor. وَفِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. Allah says that in your wealth, there's a right for the beggar and those who do not have any provisions. And we are more in need of the reward. So when you give someone, you should think of it as this person is actually doing me a favor by taking the zakah from me. Because now this person is helping me fulfill my obligation. So it's actually, I'm the one benefiting. I'm going to get the reward. And from amongst the signs of Qiyamah, as mentioned in the hadith, إِذَا اتُّخِذَ الْفَيْءُ دُوَلًا وَالزَّكَاةُ مَغْرَمَةً. That when the booty is taken by people as their own wealth, they don't distribute it amongst the people properly, and zakat is considered to be a tax, then those are the signs of Qiyamah. And when we do not disperse the zakah properly, Allah Rabbul Izzah speaks about this in the Noble Quran, and He says, وَالَّذِينَ يَكْنِزُونَ الذَّهَبَ وَالْفِضَّةَ وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَهَا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And those who hoard gold and silver and do not spend it in the path, then give them the glad tidings of a painful punishment. يَوْمَ يُحْمَى عَلَيْهَا فِي نَارِ جَهَنَّمَ. The day when it will be heated in the fire of Jahannam, and it will be branded, it will be seared onto their foreheads, onto their flanks, onto their backs. And the ulama say, why onto the foreheads? Because when you see a poor person and you don't want to give him, then you frown. So it will first be branded onto the forehead, and then a person turns to the side and gives the person the cold shoulder. So that's why the person will be branded on the shoulder, and then you give him your back and you turn away from him. And that is why the branding will go onto the back. So there is really a grave warning in this regard. There's also a hadith which speaks about the fact that the wealth will be made into a ball-headed poisonous snake with 2 black spots over its eyes, and that wealth will then come and wrap itself around the person who hasn't paid his zakah. And on one hand, we talk about not paying the zakah or not fulfilling the obligation properly. Now, in terms of upon whom, now we come into the Messiah. Who has to give zakah? Number one, a free person. So, in our world that we live in, slavery is abolished, but that has always remained as part of our fiqh, because life goes in cycles, and what seems to be abolished today comes back again later on. So therefore it remains there, that the person has to be free, not a slave. A Muslim. Non-Muslims are not addressed by the Sharia. They're not obliged. The Sharia is for the believers. And then a sane person. So if a person doesn't have their mental capacity, and also sometimes when the elderly reach a point of dementia, and they totally now reach that age of being senile, then too zakat falls off. A mature person, baligh, this is in the Hanafi madhab, and then the person must have the wealth which equals the nisab amount of silver, which is 612.36 grams of silver. So you have a nisab in gold also, which is 87, something grams of gold, and that is obviously higher, and the silver amount is less. And it will be chosen as to what will be more beneficial for the poor, the gold or the silver, the one that will bring the threshold down so that more people pay zakah. So in some places, if it's such that the zakat in gold is less than the silver amount, if it ever happens like that, then the nisab will be calculated with gold. But in our instance, silver has a lesser value. So therefore we will calculate zakat with silver so that the threshold is brought lower so that more people are paying zakat. And the wealth remains in the ownership of for the person for a lunar year, meaning at the beginning of the year and the end of the year, that the person has that wealth which is considered as wealth which is nami, it's wealth that grows, which is considered as zakatable wealth, and we will elaborate on that. And this wealth that a person shouldn't be engulfed in a debt. If it is engulfed in a debt, then there will be no zakat that is obligatory on that person. So these are broadly the 8 conditions, and there are aspects of this which will be further elaborated on as we go along. Now, when we say that a lunar year, so from the first time when a person possesses the nisab amount and that person is baligh, then 1 year later on that date, if the person still has the nisab amount and during the year that person did not reach a point of 0, then zakah will be wajib on that person 1 year later on that same date. And it's unfortunate that, many people, most people don't know what is the actual date of zakat. And therefore, those who have children, those who have grandchildren, and you're putting away money for them, and it reaches the nisab amount, then the day when they become baligh, make a note of that Islamic date, so that 1 year later, that will then remain their Islamic date for zakat. And because now most people do not know the actual date when they owned the nisab amount for the first time, and 1 year later when it became compulsory, so therefore people tend to now use Ramadan as a date. So when we say we're going to use Ramadan, what you're supposed to do is apply your mind and say, when was my actual date? And if you can't come to any conclusion in this regard, then you can use a date which is closest to that, or any then date which would be suitable. But it's got to be a specific day, because you can't say the whole month of Ramadan, because you're going to be spending, you're going to get more money in, it will fluctuate day to day, your financial situation. And therefore there has to be one specific day which is your zakat date. Now, what are the zakatable assets? The zakatable assets are gold, jewelry or ornaments, silver, jewelry or ornaments, cash or cash equivalents, anything that would be equivalent to cash, and then receivables, meaning that money that you are to receive, loans that you've given out, you have to pay the zakat on that. And then trading stock, the stock that you have if you're running a business. Now there's 2 prices here. One is the price you paid, one is the price you'll sell it for. What is the zakatable price? How will you calculate it? If you use the price you paid, it will be lower. If you use the price you're going to sell it for, it will be higher. So, to sort of balance the situation, ulama have said that if you have to sell your goods now, how much will you get? So it's not the actual price that you will sell item by item, but if you have to sell it all off, what is the price that you will get? So that is the price you can use to calculate the amount on which you need to work your trade in stock. And then livestock that is held for breeding. So this is livestock that are grazing freely and are being bred. This is very seldomly done these days. Most of the animals are fed and are being sold, so zakat will be paid on it as though it is stock of a business. And then investments, any investments that a person has made, there are different groupings of investments, but if it's an investment that you've made, then there will be zakat on that. If it's investment in property, there won't be zakat on the property, but if it's in a business, then there will be zakat on that, and we will further elaborate on that further. Looking at zakatable assets and those which are non-zakatable assets. So which are the things that you don't pay zakat on? You don't pay zakat on fixed property. So there's no zakat on your home. There's no zakat on your shop. There's no zakat on any buildings you have. Even if you have multiple buildings, there's no zakat on that. There's no zakat on other precious metals. So we know gold and silver, but if a person has titanium or platinum, which is not in the category of gold and silver, then there'll be no zakat on that. You don't pay zakat on household effects. So that means your furniture, your crockery, your cutlery, your ornaments, besides gold and silver ornaments, you won't pay zakat on that. A motor vehicle that a person has, there'll be no zakat on that. Then personal use items, there'll be no zakat. Your cell phone, there's no zakat on that. All precious stones, meaning diamonds, there's no zakat on a diamond itself or any other ruby, except if you've purchased it with the intention of selling it, then it will be considered as your trade stock. Then when you're calculating zakat, now you've calculated what are your assets. Then you subtract from that your liabilities. So what are your liabilities that you will subtract? You will subtract for the month that you are paying zakat. So just say you are going to be paying zakat on the 1st of Ramadan. So for that month in which you're going to be paying zakat, which may be the month of March, what are your monthly expenses for that month that you will be incurring through the month till the end of the month? So you can then subtract that. Current liabilities due within the next 12 months. If there are certain things that you need to pay in the next 12 months, then you can subtract that amount. That is, in terms of if you have something that a car that you finance or a home that you finance, now the payments of the next 12 months can be subtracted. Personal loan or credit sale with no repayment date is fully deductible. Meaning that if you've given or you've taken a loan from someone and that person did not say you have to pay back on a particular date. So you owe the person and there's no payment plan in place. So then you can subtract the entire loan. If there's a payment plan in place, then you will only subtract what are the payments due for the coming year. And in terms of tax, if there's tax that are to be paid at the end of the month, then you will subtract that. But tax that you paid last year, you can't subtract that. Moving on in terms of the zakat, the aspect with regards to discharging zakat. And a very important part of discharging zakat is that one has to have an intention when giving out the zakat. And that is why, someone comes to you and says, I need a loan. So in good faith, you give the man a loan, 10,000 rand. Every time you're asking him for the loan or you're looking, he's sort of dodging you. As time is going past, now he's not even making salah in the same masjid. When he sees you coming, he's walking in the different direction. So now what you do, you think, this guy is not going to pay me. Maybe I should just offset it as zakat. Then I'll just tell him it's zakat, or I'll just make intention that it's zakat, and then there's no further recourse on this. The problem is that when you gave him the loan, you didn't have the intention of zakat at that time. So therefore, that cannot be declared as zakat. At the time of giving the loan, you need to have the intention of zakat. And it can be given to an eligible recipient in any proportion. Meaning, if this person has in their possession the amount which we will say roughly 9,000 rand, or they have over and above their basic necessities equal to 9,000 rand, then they can't accept zakat. But if the person is an eligible zakat recipient, and now you have an amount of 50,000 rand you want to give to that person, there is no problem with you giving that entire amount to the person. The zakat will be done. And if there's a need of that person, then you can give the entire amount. Even though ulama have said that it's not good to give the person so much zakat that after that, that person may have to pay zakat on that wealth. But you can give how much within that amount. So once you give that person the 50,000, it will be done. Now after that, that person cannot collect any more zakat after that. So zakat cannot be given to a masjid or to a non-Muslim or to deceased estate. And if you are giving it in kind, then you should apply fair value. A person can give something you have at home. You have a lounge suite at home. So you decide that I'm give this lounge suite in zakat. So you find a poor person, you give the person the lounge suite. But now, 10 years ago, you paid 20,000 rand for the lounge suite. And then the children and the grandchildren were all jumping on the lounge suite, and one brought his pen and poked it, the other one had his pocket knife and poked it, and now you're still valuing it at 20,000 rand. That won't be fair value. The lounge suite is only valued at 2,000 rand now. So if you're giving the lounge suite in zakat, then it has to be fair value, that this is the value of this lounge suite now. I'm giving it in zakat, but it will be only to the value of 2,000 rand. So you calculate the obligation of zakat on your valuation date. That you have the date and you calculate it on that day. And organizations that pay expenses on behalf of poor, then they must appoint a wakil for the recipient of zakah on their behalf. So another way in which zakah is given out is, one is to give it to the poor person directly. And another way is the poor person appoints someone as their wakil. And then the wealth will then be given to the wakil. And then once it's given to the wakil, which is, who is the agent, then the zakah will be done. So sometimes some poor people are bad at managing their finances. So organizations then make them sign a form to say that this person who is a member of our organization, write a form to say that you are appointing this person as a wakil on your behalf. And once they sign the form, then that person now who is the wakil will be now allowed to collect zakah on behalf of the poor person. If you are giving to an organization, then you need to ensure that the organization has proper oversight. And also that your zakat won't be done at the point of giving it to the organization. It will be completed when the organization actually gives it to the poor person. So that is an point, and therefore you should choose such organizations that you have confidence in, that you know there has proper oversight. So who are these recipients of zakah? In the verse of the Noble Quran, Allah Rabbul Izzah outlines, إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ. The word sadaqat is used in the Quran for zakah also. إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَالْعَامِلِينَ عَلَيْهَا وَالْمُؤَلَّفَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ وَفِي الرِّقَابِ وَالْغَارِمِينَ وَفِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ. So 8 people. The first is a fuqara. Who is a faqir? A person who has some money but not sufficient for their everyday needs. The second person, masakin. A person who is in extreme poverty, who possesses no wealth. So these are 2 categories, but both of them can receive zakat. Then al-amilin, those who are appointed to collect the zakah. And this is in an Islamic country where there will be a collector on behalf of the Baytul Mal, the public treasury, and that collector will be paid from the zakat money. In a non-Islamic country, the organizations generally also collect lillah money, and that lillah money is used to pay for the collector, or those who are dispersing the zakat. In fact, if you look at it, when you're giving zakat, you should actually give some lillah money with that, because the organization is actually doing you a favor by taking the money from you and fulfilling your responsibility by giving it to the poor. So when you give zakah, give some lillah money with that, so that the organization is able to use the lillah money for the administration of making that wealth reach the poor. Then mu'allafati qulub. In the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there were people who were on the verge of accepting Islam, and to endear them and bring them close, this was to coax them. So this category is no longer there. This category has been abrogated in the sense that you will not give it to someone who's not yet a Muslim anymore. Then the next one is a riqab, a person who is a slave who wants to pay for their freedom. Ghari means someone who is in debt. Fi sabilillah, a needy person. So a person who is out in the path of Allah, meaning a person is on Hajj or in jihad or studying, and you find that person, the person doesn't have any wealth with them, you can give it to that person. Similarly, Ibn Sabil is a traveler. So a person is traveling, at home they have wealth, they have no access to the wealth for some reason. Maybe all the cell phone is lost, all the accounts have been jammed, closed, they don't have access to it. So now you can then give that person zakah for their travel or whatever it is they need. In dispersing zakat, one should always give preference to the closest and the most deserving recipients. Who are the people who cannot be given zakat? A wealthy Muslim. If a person is out of the threshold of nisab, then that person cannot then accept zakat. Your own direct descendants or your own direct ascendants. So basically, it's your roots and your shoots. Your father, your grandfather, your great-grandfather, your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, up and down, both cannot be given zakat. Similarly, you can't give your spouse zakat. The Sayyids, the descendants of Sayyidah Fatima radiallahu anha, cannot be given zakat. And also the Banu Hashim, the relatives of Sayyidina Ali, Sayyidina Ja'far, Sayyidina Aqil, Sayyidina Abbas, and Sayyidina Haris ibn Abdul Muttalib, they cannot be given zakat. And also non-Muslims cannot be given zakat. So how do you calculate zakat? The amount that a person will calculate is basically 1/40th of the amount, which is 2.5%. A challenge that you have with regards to some of the investments, like on the stock exchange, is that you may not be able to calculate on the lunar year, which is roughly 10 days less than the solar year. So therefore, some ulama have worked out the formula that in those cases, instead of working out on 2.5%, when the time comes on the normal solar year, you work out on 2.5775%, then you will get your zakat amount. Also, if zakat was not paid for a number of years, then you will then calculate the zakat amount. So just today I had a question, someone said, I have 10,000 rand that I haven't paid zakat for 10 years. So help me work it out. So basically, you'll go back to the first year and you will work out the zakat on 10,000 rand, which will be 250 rand. So now you got 9,750 rand and 250 rand is zakat. Then the next year, you'll work out zakat on 9,750 rand and 225 or 220 rand will be zakat. And like that, you'll continue subtracting the zakat amount till you come to the present time, and that will be the amount that is due. So that is how one calculates zakat for past years. In terms of businesses, what will you pay zakat on? A business has cash. So the cash that the business has, that you'll pay zakat on. Trade receivables, meaning that you have given goods out, you've supplied certain items to certain people, you've sold it to them, they haven't paid you. You're going to receive that money. So you will pay zakat on that money. Loans receivables, meaning someone came to you and took a loan from you, 200,000 rand. They have the money in their possession. It's your money. You've got to pay a zakat on that. And inventory, meaning all the items that you have in your shop, in your workshop, in your factory, you've got to make an inventory of that and you've got to pay zakat on that. If the business has investment in zakatable assets, then there will be zakat on that. Raw materials that a factory possess, there will be zakat on that. Also, like someone who's selling goods, maybe they're manufacturing furniture, and the zakat date comes and they have unfinished furniture, so it will be valued at that time and zakat will be paid on that. In terms of the things that a business will not pay zakat on, so the premises of the business, the plant, the equipment, the fixtures, the fittings, what they term as deposits that people have given, or prepaid expenses that you've already incurred, collaterals. If you have a collateral that you wanted to supply someone and you were doubting on the person's credibility and you took a collateral from the person, then there will be no zakat on that. Intangible assets, not for resale. Patents. So, a business may value the name of the business or the trademark at a certain amount, but there won't be any zakat on that. Deferred tax assets, that is to be paid at a later stage. And also future rental income. This lease smoothing assets, which is also future rental income, it's still to come in the future. You haven't received it. So these are, accounting terms that are used about money that you will get in the future. So you haven't yet received it. So there will be no zakat on that. In terms of the liabilities of the business, the loans that are payable. So if the business has taken a loan from someone, then you will subtract that amount. Trade payables, for your trade, if there's accounts that you've got to pay in terms of goods that you've taken from others, salaries for that month, utility bills that you've got to pay that particular month in terms of your water, lights, rates, tax payable, the tax that you're going to pay that month, also allowance for bad debt. So there is different types of debt. One is when you give someone a loan and the person will pay you back. So that is considered as dayn qawi, a strong debt. Then you have a medium debt where you've supplied some goods and the person must pay you back. And both these two categories, you have got to pay the zakat on it. You can either pay as you get the money, or you've got to pay for the full amount, but for whatever number of years you can pay once you've received the money. Then you get dayn da'if, a weak debt. A weak debt is someone who you say, that person will only pay you when the cows come home or when the fat lady sings. So, that particular one, there's no hope of getting the money. So in that case, you won't pay zakat on the money. However, maybe that person had no intention of paying you. And then the person went for Hajj. And after going for Hajj, the person then decided, you know what, I need to pull my affairs in order. So he comes back and he decides to pay you 20 years later. So you had no expectation, you've written it off. So when you receive it, you won't pay for all the years. You'll only pay for the current year when you normally pay your zakat. Talking about getting money that you don't expect. The most unique question I received the other day. Someone said, when I was a student, I used to go to the movies. But I never used to pay. I used to sneak in from the back door. And now I'm making tawbah. So I want to know, must I go to Star Kiniko and pay them for all the movies I watched without paying? At least there's some consciousness, but there was no need to pay because it wasn't a valid transaction anyway. So that doesn't mean I'm giving you a ticket to sneak into the movies. So there should be allowance for bad debt. And then non-deductible business liabilities, the provision for leave pay, accrued expenses not yet incurred for work not completed. So those are things you can't subtract as yet. Let's move on now to some of the contemporary aspects. When a person has a bank account, that is treated as a loan that you give to the bank. Or if there's some money that you're going to receive from a customer, that is a receivable, or balance on zakat valuation date is zakatable. So at that point, when you're calculating your zakat, you will consider these amounts and you'll pay zakat on that. You have Islamic investments. So you have a mudaraba investment or a wakala. A mudaraba is one person gives money, another person is going to do the business, and then you're going to make money that way. So zakat will be payable on the balance, including profit, on the zakat valuation day. What is the normal day that you pay? You'll check what is my amount at that time, what is the goods, what is the amount, and then you'll pay zakat on that. In unit trusts, zakat will be payable on the market value that is reflected on the statement. And also, investments, all investments that are locked in terms of the investments that we have, that is fully zakatable. Zakat on shares. So, shares in itself is a contentious issue. Some ulama say that it's not permissible to invest in shares because it doesn't fall within the ambit of any sort of legal Islamic transaction. Other ulama say that shares are allowed with certain conditions, that it should be trading in those things which is halal. There shouldn't be a large amount of interest. You should object to those things which are non-Islamic compliant. Then with those type of conditions, you can trade in shares. Now, when you have invested in shares, what type of company have you invested in? And what is the money going for? So if it is where the entire amount is being used for you buying and selling shares, then you'll have to pay zakat on the entire amount. If it is that you invested in a company and your investment, a certain amount of that is for the fixtures and the fittings and all of that, and the non-zakatable things, and a certain amount is for the trade. So then you will only pay zakat on that amount which is for the trade itself. And you will then calculate that this is the fixtures and the fittings of the whole thing, the whole company. This is the trade amount. Now, once you've come to a figure of that, then you'll look at what is your share of that. And then from your share, you will then calculate your 2.5% or your 2.577%, as we said earlier on. So that is what you'll do with shares. In terms of foreign currency, zakat can be paid directly in the foreign currency. So if you have some dollars, you can either pay, you have $10,000, you pull out $250 and you give it in zakat. Or you can determine the rand value of the foreign exchange on the zakat anniversary date. Dollar is worth, say, 20 rand. Now you pay that amount. So you will multiply then I got $1,000 times 20 rand. Value is 20,000 rand. I will have to pay 250 rand on every 10,000, so it's 500 rand that I have to pay on 20,000 rand. So that is in terms of foreign currencies. Now we come to the next aspect, which is compulsory pension funds or provident funds. So here you have a compulsory one. The company you're working for, they take it out. You don't have a choice. It's mandatory. So on that type of a thing, there's no zakat because you don't have access to it. It wasn't on your own doing. A voluntary provident fund, what you will do is every year you will then look at what is the realizable value of that entire provident fund. That at this stage, if I have to cash up, I'll get $1 million. So I've got to pay 25,000 rand. So you will continue to analyze year to year. So that is in terms of the voluntary pension fund. Then conventional investments, you pay on the capital amount. If you've invested with a normal conventional investment company, then they're dealing in interest. Interest is haram. So you will only pay zakat on the core amount that you've invested, which is your money. What is accrued is interest, so there'll be no zakat on interest. That has to be given away to the poor, with the intention that I'm fulfilling the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there are certain ways in which you can work out your amount in terms of the interest that you are paying, the principal amount, and year on year in that way. That is in terms of a conventional loan. And therefore, one should not get involved in these things. You take a conventional loan. The home is worth R1 million. You take conventional loan on 10% over 20 years, you're going to end up paying 2.1 million rand. You're going to pay 1.1 million rand interest. And therefore, we need to learn what is delayed gratification. That instead of buying it now and pay later, wait, accrue the money, and then at the point, if you, instead of buying it now and paying for 20 years, and paying an extra R1,000,000 in interest. Rather wait 10 years and buy the home for R1,000,000 and then you don't have interest. You've saved yourself from earning the wrath of Allah. And on the other hand, you've saved yourself money. So in terms of the different Islamic types of transactions, whether it is an Islamic institute that you are investing with or a Sharia compliant one, it may be a murabaha transaction. So the murabaha transaction is where there's something that you want to purchase, the institute comes in and purchases it, they then sell it to you at a higher amount and you pay it off over a number of years. Now what are the payments for the next 12 months? So there was a car that you wanted to buy, it's 100,000 Rand, the financial institute comes in and they purchase it for 100,000 Rand, now they sell it to you for 150,000 Rand and you've got to pay 5,000 Rand a month over 4 years or 5 years. So when you're calculating your zakah, you can't subtract the whole 150,000 Rand because you have a payment plan. So what you will subtract is the payments for the next 1 year. So you're paying 5,000 Rand a month or 2,000 Rand a month. So you say for the next 12 months, I will pay at 5,000 Rand, 60,000 Rand. So you're then allowed to subtract that amount. In terms of a musharaka, and this is one of the financing mechanisms that is used, and a diminishing musharaka. So where a person has a deposit and they want to purchase a home or make an investment. So the finance institute comes in and says that, okay, you're going to put 20%, we will put 80%. It's now a partnership. But what will happen is they will divide their 80% into certain shares, units, and that will be offered as a sale to you at certain intervals. Now, in terms of zakat, you can then look at the next time when you're going to buy certain amounts of shares, the shares that you will purchase at that time, within that frame, that is what you can subtract. But you can't subtract the entire amount because it's a partnership, it's not a debt upon you. In terms of lease commitments, when a person is in a lease, the lease is worth 200,000 and for the whole year. But your amount that is due is only for that month. So you can only subtract the amount of that month. Similarly with ijara finance. A person has taken a car on ijara finance. So he can't then subtract the entire year's payments. It's an ijara. You are hiring the car month to month. So you can take that amount of 1 month. In terms of the rewards programs, so you have e-bucks, you count, whatever it is, there will be no zakat on these things. These are gifts from, the various organizations or programs. So there will be no zakat on this because of the fact that it's just a gift from you and it is redeemed in different ways. In terms of cryptocurrencies, so remember, it's a currency. That is what it was designed for. It was not designed as a commodity to be purchased and sold. And what has happened is, it's being used as a commodity to buy and sell because of the fluctuation of the price. You then purchase it at a lower price and sell it at a higher price, and that's how people have been making money. But the primary purpose of this, as the name suggests, it's a currency. So there will be zakat on cryptocurrency, and the zakat can either be paid as a cryptocurrency or it can be paid. You can then convert that amount into cash and pay the amount. So there are ulama who say that it doesn't qualify. At present time, it doesn't meet the criteria of a currency from an Islamic point of view. But it does meet the criteria of something which is tangible wealth because of the effort that goes in the mining process, and it's something that is desired and bought. So therefore it does meet the Sharia definition of wealth, and therefore it is permissible to purchase it and to sell it, and there will be zakat on it. So how do you calculate your zakat? Zakat, every person has the Islamic date and you have a nisab amount. So when you own that nisab amount for the first time, you've got to document that date. Then what happens is there are certain types of wealth that a person possesses. As we've spoken about gold, silver, trade in stock, zakatable wealth. You look at your zakatable wealth at 1 year later from that point. You then minus your liabilities, all the things that you've got to pay on, all the liabilities that you have within the next 12 months, or certain instances that is for 12 months, and most instances for that month only, and then you will then pay your zakat on that. The balance amount is what is now your zakatable amount, and you will pay 2.5% of that. So that is how one calculates one's zakat. As we said, that this is a important injunction of the Sharia, and it should be done with the right spirit. And something remarkable that we've came across recently, when we look at the current type of rulership and leadership we have across the globe, and people take up positions for self-enrichment and for their own purpose and their own progress, so to say. And leaders of the Muslim world, with what's happening, they all seem to be absent, only focus on their own agenda. So those that people looked up to but won't do anything now because they've got to protect themselves. And you look at someone like Salahuddin Ayyubi rahimahumullah, who was a sultan, who at some point was the most powerful ruler of the Muslim world. And throughout his life, zakat was never compulsory upon him. Zakat was never compulsory upon him, and he never performed Hajj because of being preoccupied. His yearning was for Hajj, and zakat, he never had the wealth to pay zakat. Despite being in that position of power, where he could have just instructed, and it could have been given to him, yet that was the honesty. And therefore Ibn Athir rahimahumullah said that it is sufficient as an accolade for him is that his name will be mentioned along the name of Sayyidina Umar bin Khattab, and they both are the liberators of Masjid al-Aqsa. So this is a great ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the fact that you all have attended this evening's program and the other programs, this is a great sign of your enthusiasm for deen. There's various virtues of a person who comes out for knowledge, and alhamdulillah, you all have done that. May Allah